people with justice to all. Let us seek wisdom so that we may act in the best interests of our people, our neighbors, and our country. All this we ask so that we may serve our community with fairness and respect, putting their needs before all.
Please be seated.
Okay. Commissioner Chahal? Here. Commissioner Jain? Here. Commissioner Salami?
Blame here.
Salim, I'm sorry. Commissioner Kelly?
Here.
And Chairperson Casey.
Present.
And I'm Commissioner O'Halloran being secretary today. Brandon Reinhardt has now resigned and the vacancy has been announced.
Thank you. All right, declaration of commission procedures. Public hearings are conducted by the chair in accordance with the following procedures. The chair of the commission directs all activity during the hearings. All comments shall be addressed to the commission. Any item on this agenda may be continued to a subsequent hearing. Applicants will be allotted up to 10 minutes to present and justify proposals, following staff presentation of the item. Other speakers will be given up to 4 minutes. The applicant is then allotted up to 5 minutes for rebuttal of comments. No additional comments will be accepted upon the close of the public hearing, although the commission reserves the right to direct questions to any speaker on any matter. Special procedures and time limits may be applied to any items as prescribed by the chair. Appeal of commission actions must be filed in writing within 7 calendar days. Okay. Do we have any continuances or exceptions? Okay, none. Okay, so let's move on to the consent calendar.
One item on the consent. One item on the consent calendar is the Planning Commission minutes for December 20th.
Okay, any motion to approve?
Motion to approve consent calendar. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Let's move on to item 6 for hearing.
Okay, items set for hearing is at location 281 Serena Way, and it is approximately 60 foot north of Stevens Creek, and are asking for a rezoning and a use permit to allow a child care facility that is care for up to 28 people.
Okay, thank you. Would the staff like to present?
Thank you, Rebecca with the Planning Division. So the item before you this evening is a use permit and rezoning for the property located at 281 Serena Way. So the rezoning would be from one of our standard single-family zoning districts to OG, which is our general office zoning district. There's also a use permit proposed to allow the outdoor play area associated with a new daycare. Also proposed but not part of the proceedings tonight is a minor modification to allow a reduction in the required lot width from 65 to 60 feet, which is 65 being the required lot width in OG. So the project site is located near the southern limit of the city, very close to Stevens Creek Boulevard. It's surrounded by car dealerships to the south and west, and then other single-family uses to the north and east. The applicant approached the city in early 2017, proposing a daycare at this location. Staff had several internal meetings and determined that this may be an appropriate location, given it would provide a transition from Stevens Creek Boulevard and its proximity to Stevens Creek Boulevard. In addition, it is surrounded by commercial uses on 2 sides. The formal application was submitted later in January 2017, along with improvement plans and a traffic study. So with the application was a petition submitted by the applicant with approximately 10 signatures from surrounding neighbors showing support for the project. We also had the on-site sign posted since February 2017. However, staff hadn't received any inquiries until the notices for tonight's hearing went out on January 12th. So the concerned emails we received, which are attached to the packet, we also received another one before tonight's hearing, which I believe Rosa passed out, were mostly concerned with the availability of on-street parking due to the existing businesses. It sounds like there may be some encroachment from the surrounding car dealerships into the neighborhood, employees or otherwise. Potential safety issues, and then the conversion of the site to a commercial use from what is now a residential use. Many of the issues raised were results of the existing businesses in the neighborhood and aren't necessarily things the applicant would have control over. So in regards to the parking by surrounding businesses on Serena Way, code enforcement completed an inspection and they're doing ongoing inspection to see if that is an issue. We're also looking into the use permits of those surrounding dealerships to see if there is any specific condition requiring employees to park on site. So that's ongoing. In response to the conversion of the site to commercial use, the applicant is proposing to maintain the residential character of the building. And also, as a commercial business, it would provide a buffer from Stevens Creek Boulevard and those dealerships to the rest of the neighborhood. So the general plan of the site is medium density residential. And the general plan also has policies encouraging conveniently located childcare. It's one of the goals in our general plan, as well as this overall state goal, because we are an underserved community in terms of daycare. So based on this, staff continues to support the application based on our general plan and council direction regarding daycare uses. The existing R16L zoning would not allow for schools or daycare. So that is why they're proposing to rezone to OG general office. Originally, when the application was submitted, it was submitted as a rezoning to a commercial use. However, based on staff's analysis, we thought a office zoning would be more appropriate, given that if the daycare should ever cease operations, another use in OG would be more compatible with the surrounding neighbors, something like an office, a general business office, an administrative office. And then the use permit is required for outdoor uses in the OG zoning district, the outdoor use in this case being the play area. So the site, it's very difficult to see, but it's included in your packet. The site plan includes a reconstruction of the existing building, 4 parking spaces on site in the rear of the property, 2 drop-off parking spaces along the front of the property in a curved driveway configuration. They also have a 955 square foot playground area in the rear, and then entry and exit driveways flanking the building. Let me go back. Inside the building would be 2 classrooms. And so per our zoning code for preschool or school uses, the parking ratio is 1 parking space for each classroom or office, but in no case less than 3 spaces. So based on 2 parking spaces, they would be required to have 3. But in this case, they have 4 in the back or rear of the property here. We don't count the drop-off spaces toward their parking requirement, but they do meet the minimum, which would be 3. So the applicant did provide a trip generation and parking analysis, which was prepared by Hexagon. So the number of peak hour trips were studied. It found that there would be 22 a.m. peak hour trips and 23 p.m. peak hour trips, and that the existing capacity of both Stevens Creek Boulevard and Serena Way could handle that amount of traffic. It also found that adequate parking was provided. So the proposed operations would include 2 teachers on site at all times, an overall total of 28 students, and operating hours Monday through Friday, 7:30 a.m. to 6 p.m. The applicant's going to discuss the specifics of their operations a little more in their presentation. So our recommendation, so the final approval of the rezoning will rest with the city council. So it'll be referred to city council with your recommendation. And then the approval of the use permit is subject to, or is contingent upon the eventual approval of the rezoning by the city council. So at this time, we're recommending that you recommend to the city council approval of the rezoning and also approve the use permit contingent upon city council rezoning the property. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would the applicant like to present?
Questions to
Oh,
staff?
questions to staff. Oh, right. See now, Commissioner Chahal.
You discussed about the code violation is being taken care of on that street. Do we have some more information on that? Like what were the type of code violation being done and what were the remedial measure on that? Do we have any report? Because it has been going on for some time now, right? The parking overflow.
So we
and
never got a formal complaint from any of the neighbors, but as a result of the emails we were getting, we asked code enforcement to go and take a look at the situation. So there's no confirmed violation at this time. They are going to look into the use permits, like I said, of the car dealerships, specifically Porsche, I believe, and BMW, to see if those dealerships have a condition in their use permits requiring that employees park on site, which would obviously prevent them from parking on street. So they're looking into that.
Okay. And my second question is, if you look at the resolution for the playground outside, the bullet 2A, it does mention that operation of the use of the building applied for under circumstances. Basically, when mentioned that the proposal would allow auto sales, rentals, and display that meet the interest of local resident and customers for a greater region.
Yes, so
That
that
does
was pointed
not-
out. It is a typo, so it'll be updated before the city council hearing.
Okay. And my next question is, there is a encroachment to the north side residence. Can you please explain that, like how that encroachment is taken care of? What if the next door neighbor say, no, I don't want that thing to be encroached
Sure.
into my property?
So I failed to mention that. It's hard to see, but on the site plan, you can see on the north side, there is an encroachment, like you said, to the north property. The property owner actually does own both properties, the subject property and the property to the north. In order to make the daycare viable, they do need to provide the 10-foot wide driveway on the north side. So they are proposing, and it is included as a condition of approval, an easement allowing cross access.
So going forward, what happens if the north side property is sold? What's the remedy for, let's say, this get approved or not approved? That's a different story. But what if the north side property is sold as a separate unit and gentleman X buys it and he does not agree to the encroachment? So what happens to it?
Well, the easement would run with the land, so they should be aware of that when they're buying the property. It would be on their
So
property.
it is binding basically to the next owner.
Correct.
Okay, and I have another. Can you please explain condition EL20 if you go through that? I'm a bit confused about that. Is this the same thing basically we are talking about?
Correct, yeah, they're going to establish an easement between the two properties. And the recordation of the easement would be required prior to building permit issuance.
Okay, so basically that will be recorded in the county register and then it will be taken care of.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jane.
I believe you answered my first question, which is that the document shows 2 parcels, and it was confusing in the document why 2 parcels are shown. And why would you show 2 parcels other than the fact that the owner owns both parcels? And my next question is, I see 2 different design styles in the elevation drawings. One looks sort of flat like stucco, and the other one looks like clapboard.
So they provided the existing elevations as well as the proposed elevations.
Okay, and so will that go through some sort of ARC or hearing to resolve what the design will look like? I can point out where it is in the packet if you like. Okay, the other question was, and this is just confusing, it seems like a lot of regular engineering conditions were duplicated. It was a cut and paste into the electrical. So from EL5 to EL20, those shouldn't be in the electrical. So I think it's just confusing that they're there. Then what I was not sure about was somewhere in here I read that there's a 10-foot sidewalk being required. Is that correct? And then finally, it seems like a large portion of this property is being paved over, and it didn't seem like that there was an adequate description of what's going to happen to all of the rainwater, the storm water. So maybe you could describe that. And then finally, one of the letters mentioned that people drive too fast on Serena. And is there any mitigation that we can do to slow down? You know, either put a bump in the road or narrow the road or something, because they're complaining that there's going to be kids here, and I don't know if there's any way to handle that.
So, Commissioner Jane, so these are conditions that are existing outside of the proposed use. So they would have to be referred to the Traffic Engineering Division for study, where they could put out basically a meter to basically record the speed and also the traffic counts to see whether or not any type of traffic mitigation or speed mitigation is warranted. So we could refer that to our Traffic Engineering Division, and it would go into the pipeline of requests.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what about the stormwater?
So the project site is less than 10,000 square feet, so it's not subject to our stormwater requirements or C3 requirements.
But we would look at best management practices, which are using LID or low impact development features such as landscaping. They have the play area. So to look at as much permeable surface as possible as part of the site design improvements.
Okay. I believe that's all I have for now. Thank you.
You were also asking about the sidewalk.
Yeah, the sidewalk.
Wonder if that's related to the 10-foot wide driveway on the
Oh,
north
here it
side.
is.
Usually if.
It's under
Right,
EL,
yeah, we
EL 13.
right, we saw
Provide
that.
minimum 10-foot sidewalk along
Public
Serena.
Works will request a minimum width based upon the classification of the property. So if it's a commercial property, it's going to be a wider, just like on El Camino now, or some of the other arterials. So that standard is usually reflective of the land use classification of the property. So since it's changing to commercial, professional office, that would be the standard, 10 feet.
Which means that the other sidewalk on the street is.
Would be narrower, because it's residential.
5 or 6 feet, and then it would go to 10 feet in front of this property.
Yes.
I see. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner O'Halloran.
Just a clarification, the parking was done by Hexagon. Is that something that the city hired, or was that from the applicant and the city just approved it?
Yeah, so the applicant provided it, and then Hexagon worked on comments with our traffic division directly.
They worked with the city at that point.
Correct.
And just so I understand again, when you say if the property is sold, the use permit, it continues in any way, or is it gone? There is a continuing use permit once it's approved?
So any land use entitlement, such as a rezoning, a use permit, or a variance, it runs with the land. It does not run with the applicant or an owner. So it's recorded, and then it would be valid unless there was a cessation of the use for a period of more than 1 year. So if the daycare went away and was vacant for a year, then it would just revert to the OG zoning district, and those general uses could be allowed, unless there's some further restriction that you place on the zoning.
Okay, so you mentioned a potential future use would be office building?
It
And
could
so
just
that
be
would be
reused as
within
an
the
office.
Context of the use permit?
Well, I'm sorry, that would be a function of the zoning, not of the use permit.
But it would
If-
continue?
If the use permit, say they vacated the premises and did not operate a daycare for a 1-year period, that daycare operation would no longer be available after the 1-year period unless they reapplied for a new use permit. Then just the land uses allowed under the OG zoning district would be permitted in that building.
So it could be that somebody comes along with an office building?
Well,
and
an
they're okay.
office use, the changes to the building would be limited to what was allowed under that zoning district. So if they wanted to make tenant improvements or changes of that nature, then that would be required. And they would have to demonstrate that their parking available meets the land use that they're proposing.
Commissioner Kelly.
You know, I've noticed when I've driven down the street, because I drive down on a regular basis, is it possible, can we put a speed limit sign so as soon as somebody turns off of Stevens Creek onto the street, that they see the speed limit? I mean, if we're going to have kids there, it would be nice to kind of remind people to slow down.
Yes, we could put in that request with the traffic division.
Okay. And then I haven't noticed a lot of cars per se parking there for the car dealers, but if code enforcement can kind of monitor the street, is that possible? So if we see undue number of cars there, we can verify with all the dealers, like you said, that they're complying and all their employees are not parking on the street?
Yeah, it would be difficult to determine who the employees are, but in terms of if any vehicles are being tested there, that's something that we have had code enforcement go out to look at, because they would have, say, paper plates, that kind of thing, license plates, or to check whether or not we see the same cars there, near the corner. That might be an indication whether or not the traffic or their employees or parking is spilling over into the neighborhood. But generally speaking, unless there's restricted parking on the street, that's another option, is that the neighbors could get together and file a request for restricted parking along Serena Way, so that unless you have a parking permit, you cannot park on the street.
Quite frankly, I haven't noticed it except maybe at the corner when I've turned onto the corner.
That's where we've largely seen it too. It's right around there.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, Commissioner O'Halloran? No, I'm sorry. Commissioner Chahal?
I have a follow-up question on we are zoning to OG as a office, general office, right? Right now, we have, as per the Hexagon study, we have appropriate parking for 2 teachers or 4 on that. So the zoning stands as office, and down the line, let's say you have 10 employees in that. How does this study apply to that zoning where you can have 10 employees in that building? Then the parking situation will overflow anyway, right?
Well, the parking requirements are reflective of, like you said, the land use type. So if somebody has an office, there's a standard, basically ITE or transportation engineer's value that they give to the amount of parking that would be required based upon a typical land use. So for an office, their assessing an employment density of a certain range. So the ratio for office buildings that we incorporated into the zoning code is 1 parking space for every 300 square feet of office area. So if the building was, say, 2,000 square feet, we would require essentially 6 parking spaces. So that would be a limitation. They would have to provide those 2 additional parking spaces on site. If they can't, they would not be able to assume an office use there.
So basically what we are saying is we'll impose the condition on square footage, not on the number of employees on that building working on that.
None of our parking standards are based upon employment density except for doctor's offices.
So if we are going for zoning as an office, why aren't we imposing those conditions right away, right now, about 1:300 parking requirement?
Because it's automatically required. It would just basically be reiterating what's in the zoning code.
But then we don't have appropriate parking. If we apply
Not for an
that,
office, because you're granting basically like an overlay or a use permit for an office. I'm sorry, for a daycare. If you wanted to put a condition in there saying that if the daycare goes away, that they would, 2 additional parking spaces or however many we would need would have to be provided on site, which means modifying the building. Otherwise, we could put something in there to basically as a warning.
so what I'm confused about is what trumps other, like is it the zoning or the use permit? Which comes first? Like if it is zoning, like we are approving zoning as per office space, then that should come right away. Okay, we will need that much parking space. And use permit come later on, like whether daycare or something. So why aren't we asking for a zoning, when we are asking for a zoning, particular zoning, why aren't we asking for that parking requirements right away? That's my question.
Okay, because they're applying for a use permit to operate a daycare and the building's being modified internally, it's just 2 big rooms for a daycare. It's not being retrofitted for an office use. Therefore, the parking that's required for the use is reflective of what it is you're doing on the site. That's how basically all of our developments work. So if somebody's building an office campus, they're going to provide an office parking ratio on the site.
Yeah, so hypothetically, I can have just 2 rooms and have 15 people sitting over there making calls on that floor. So the 2-room does not give me an answer that why we don't have appropriate parking according to the square footage. That's my question.
Because they're not applying for an office use.
But we are applying for zoning as office.
You're applying for a zoning district that allows daycare uses. So that's why we're changing the zoning, because it's not allowed under the R1 zoning district. But under this approval, the only use that's going to be allowed under the use permit would be a daycare if that is approved by the Planning Commission.
Right. But
And the zoning is approved by City Council.
if I recollect, you mentioned that if, let's say after a year, the daycare goes
Right.
out, then they can use it as an office.
Only if they apply for a business license, and at that point, that's the trigger for us to hold the business license until they meet the zoning district requirements. So we can't issue the license to operate an office use unless they comply with the development standards of the OG district, which is 1 parking space for every 300 square feet. How big is the building? It's how many?
24.
Okay, so it essentially would require 6 parking
And
spaces.
I'd like to make a point of clarification. Tonight, if you recommend the rezoning, it'll be rezoned to OG where a daycare is a permitted use. So the use permit tonight isn't for the daycare, I believe it's for the outdoor play
Yes,
area.
I'm sorry, the outdoor.
So it's and like staff said, if the daycare is turned into another permitted use, such as offices, I believe professional offices such as accountants, architects, and doctors are allowed in OG areas. And then, like staff said, if they go for a business license for that business, we can hold their business license until they comply with our development standards.
Okay, so basically when they come with the new use permit, at that time we'll impose those conditions.
I don't believe it'll be a new use permit. It'll be a new business license.
Yeah, Same, like use permit as a daycare or use permit as a new license?
The use permit tonight is just for the outdoor play area.
Today, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So just to let you know, we get inquiries like this every day. So there are instances where we have non-conforming buildings, like say recently a garage was operating, they wanted to put a car dealership, a small car dealership in there. We found out they didn't have any on-site parking, therefore we could not approve the business license. So that use cannot establish itself. It's the same thing each time someone comes in and asks for a business license. Or in this case, if it was an office, they would probably want tenant improvements to remove the play equipment and that kind of thing. That is basically our measure that we tell them about the development standards. They have to look into this. Usually a property owner or a operator is going to look into whether or not the use fits their needs and it meets the city's standards so they can establish a business there. Otherwise, they would not be able to get a business license.
Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner Jane.
I think my question was answered. So they wouldn't have to apply for a new use permit to operate it as an office? Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Saleh.
Yeah, I'm curious as if anyone has notified the residents that there are other options for the traffic and parking issues, like 2-hour permit parking. And we had to do that in our cul-de-sac when it was being used as overflow for Kaiser. That would help mitigate some of that concern. Also, I'm hearing that you would have to, if this unit or if this facility was converted to something else, they would have to reapply. So that reassures me on that. Are there any concerns or comments that have been submitted about encroachment of, I'm sorry, not encroachment, but of it eating away at the neighborhood, one parcel at a time? I think I saw a letter on that. Is there a limitation that can be placed that there is no additional beyond that? Or is this going to be a case-by-case basis going all the way up the street?
Yes, like as you mentioned, there was at least one letter that mentioned about the encroachment into the neighborhood, and should other parcels, people want to see that if this was approved, they could possibly do the same thing. As you're seeing, this process takes a while. It has to be granted for each individual property, and this is the process involved. It's a public hearing, it's review of a development application. I don't know that we would support any other ones around there. This one is unique because it's surrounded, as Rebecca said, on 2 sides by commercial, and it's close to Stevens Creek. So just picking off an individual parcel in the middle of the block, really, that's a different situation. So, and again, it goes through a vetting process. We look at our general plan policies, the location, the land use type, and evaluate them all on a case-by-case basis, so that the process isn't a simple one, and we have plenty of
Is there
people
any
here
history on the public parking space that's adjacent to it? Was that a home that was converted to public parking? That's on the street face?
I don't know, do you know?
I see a home across the street from
It
it.
very well could have been, you know, quite a while ago, so.
And just to clarify, actually, the building across the street is a business office. It's currently vacant, though.
Commissioner Salem was also asking about 2-hour parking?
Oh,
Yeah,
the
2-hour parking was something that we pursued to alleviate overflow employees.
I think the main concern seems to be just the overall, you know, the change in the land use and then the operation. So we could certainly review that with the property owners if they're interested in other types of restrictions on parking for their neighborhood.
So if we were to pursue that, the neighborhood needs to agree to the plan. Is that?
Well, that is not a function of the Planning Commission because it's through our Public Works Department. It's in the public right-of-way, so it's strictly through our Traffic Division.
Understood.
But that's available to them.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, no more questions. So would the applicant like to come up and tell us about the project?
Thank you for coming, for everybody. My name is Biwin Liu. I'm on the childcare field for 25 years. I love kids. I want to have, the dream daycare to work. And this is a small center. So right now we apply 28. Because when the state license may gonna goes to 26, because the playground is not that big enough. So the capacity may coming down. So that's my dream. And my husband, Eugene, he's an engineer. He support me. Thank him so much for me to become, I want to open our own centers, put my own philosophy for the kids. And I have 2 kids, and I raise them up, and I work in different centers. So I always dream if I can work in my own centers, and especially right now, because I work in the centers, I find that because kids eating very healthy food, so I want to open a center with organic food to serving for the community. And on my street, there's a couple young kids, and I spoke to them, they signed. They were so great, and they encouraged me to open a center to working and serving for the community. That's what I'm here for. I will apply for it.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner O'Halloran.
Is this the time to ask the applicant?
Yeah,
I have a question.
Yeah.
When did you purchase the property?
It's 2013.
13?
Mm-hmm.
And you said somebody...
sorry about it, 2015, my husband whispered to me.
Okay.
Yeah.
You said somebody is encouraging you to open the daycare at that time?
No, because no, at that time in my dream, I wanted to open a center. So I did a walk around the neighborhood. First one, I went to the city, consulting with the city. So that's possible to open a daycare center. And
That was before you purchased it?
Yes, and then procedure. And at the first meeting, we had a meeting. I spoke to, I think, the gentleman who's planning department. He said it's possible because across street it's an office, and it's the next, and plus I own my 2, I'm my next house. So then we can do the easement for the driveway. That's before I purchased. I did a consulting with the city. Thank you.
Commissioner Jane.
One of the letters mentioned that if the kids are going to be younger than 6, that your teacher-to-student ratio is not low enough. I think right now you have 1 teacher per 14 kids. But if you're going to have toddlers in there, I think you have to have a 1-to-8 ratio or something. I mean, you know this business better than I do, but
Okay.
I thought that for younger kids, you need to have a different ratio.
Yeah, so that's why we applied. So we're not going to have a toddler. So we're going to form 2 to for the school ages 1 to 15. So that would be a baby ratio for the employee we applied.
The school ages are 1 to 15?
Yes.
I thought I said it was up to 6 years old in there.
No, while the school age is in the afternoon, we don't from 3 to 6 we can have a school age kids. That depends on license. So I did it from 2 to 6 years old. So then that depends on because for the license they can give you from 2 to 12 years old.
So then that calls to question the traffic study.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're going to have younger kids in there in the mornings,
Yes.
28, you're going to have 28 drop-offs, 28 pickups, and then you're going to have the teenagers after school in up to 15 years old in the afternoons, right? So now you're going to have more drop-offs and pickups. Is that correct?
That's not really, that's how you figure out. Because the school ages from under 12 years old, they cannot able to drive by themselves. If you have a kids come in the school age and there's a capacity, capacity is 28 kids, you cannot exceed that number. So how much, doesn't matter when you're going to drop off the kids or not. So that's a capacity 28, that's just fixed. You cannot have like kids more than that numbers in that building.
Well, I understand, but you're saying that you're now in the afternoons going to have kids up to 15 years old.
Maybe I thought that the ratio is 1 to 15. I didn't say 15 years old. We cannot have kids over
Oh,
12
the
years.
ratio is 1 to
Yes,
15.
1 to 15.
Oh, okay, I thought the ages.
Sorry
Okay,
about it. I'm sorry for misleading you.
okay. But you're saying that the ages are going to be 2 to 6. And for 2 to 6, a 1 to 15 ratio is okay by law. Is that
Okay,
correct?
for the 2 to 6, for the 2 to 16, it's 1 to 12. And for the 12 years old and over 6 years old to 12 years old is 1 to 15.
I'm very confused. I'm sorry.
You know, that's a
Because I
school
thought
age
this is
from
a,
6 years old to 12 years old. That's a school age kids.
but any kid that's over 5 years old or 6 years old is going to be in regular school. They're not going to be in daycare during the day.
Right. But if under 12 years old, they still not allowed to stay home by themselves. So then they, after school, some people, like we may gonna, some people still, maybe we don't apply for the school age, because that's, I just give you when I do it, I apply from 2 to 6 years old.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because otherwise, if you had 2 sets of kids, one for the morning and one for the afternoon, you're going to get a lot more traffic. Because the kids aren't going to come by themselves. Mostly, they're going to be driven. That
Right.
seems to be the way it works in
Right.
So
the
I,
Bay
bel-
Area.
I believe what you're saying is that 28 is the total enrollment.
Exactly.
So 28 is the total enrollment throughout the day, no matter what time they arrive or
Oh,
leave.
I see. Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
capacity 28 kids. You cannot exceed that number that I said, no matter when you're going to drop them or not, because that the license will only give you that numbers. You cannot exceed for any time from 7:30 to 6 o'clock.
So what I'm hearing is that you can't have one set of 28 kids in the morning and the second set of 28 kids in the afternoon.
No,
That's
you
not how
can't.
this works.
No, that's not how it works.
28 for the entire day.
Thank you.
Okay, thank
Yeah,
you.
that's
Okay,
the
that
actual. Thank you for
clarifies
your for help. Yeah.
Okay. That's all I had. Thank you.
Okay.
I remember reading about somebody complaining about Airbnb. Was that out of this property? Oh, okay, but you're not doing that anymore.
Okay, thank you. I brought a lease agreement with my tenant. Yes, I did a rental with one of the family and who has a kids, 15 years old, and he goes to Cupertino High School. So when I signed lease with them, they did not tell me to do the Airbnb. However, after a few months, I noticed they rent a room for the Airbnb. And the lease is going to turn expired on March 1st. I have a term here, I have a lease here. So I can pass around to let you to look at it. So, and I consulted with a lawyer, attorney. They said there's no, because they didn't turn the whole house as Airbnb. So if I do that procedure, so we're going to eviction, take it 3 to 6 months. So rather just waiting for March 1st, 2018, the term expired, will be easy to do it. So I follow that. And I have a lease agreement with you and you can look at it.
Thank you.
I rented to the tenant. They did not, and from my lease agreement, they did not tell me they're doing the Airbnb. They was rented as a family living with our kids. Because I believe a family with the kids will be more safer. Because before I rented to the college students, there was a later, college student had some conflict with the neighborhood. So I signed the college students away. So I changed it to the family who rented this house. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, this is the lease agreement, and the kids are 15 years old and can give the name of the student's name. He goes to Cupertino High. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I guess there's no more questions. So thank you very much. We're
Okay.
gonna open the hearing to the rest of the public now.
Yeah, then one more thing is if it's, excuse me, sorry, but once it would be the daycare, I think we would be more safer. There's no Airbnb issue continue. So that just, I think I try to explain to that. Thanks for.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
All right, would the member of the public like to speak? I think I guess I can just call each person by name, or Mr. Joe Mastroianni.
Yeah, my name is Joe Mastrini. I've lived on Serena Way for 40 years, and our residence is about 300 feet from the proposed project. I'd like to provide some background, what's going on in the neighborhood. So I think the neighborhood has suffered a decline in its quiet residential nature due to the increased non-residential use of the street. For example, increased use of Serena Way as a shortcut between Stevens Creek and Kiley Boulevard. It's due to increased traffic on Stevens Creek and Kiley. There's routine use by dealership mechanics to test drive vehicles. There's on-street parking of about 8 vehicles every workday from employees of the dealerships. And we know what dealership it is. They've been observed going to that dealership, and they wear uniforms. So code enforcement has gone to the dealership management, and unfortunately, nothing's been resolved. And there's also another thing, overflow parking from a very popular coffee shop just around the corner, especially on weekends. So it's not uncommon to find the first 400 to 600 feet from Stevens Creek filled, all the empty spots filled with non-residential parking. So that's an issue that's going to be exacerbated by perhaps more street parking. With all due respect, I'd like to point out some questionable assumptions and conclusions. How much more time do I have? Is that it?
You're out of time, but please close your comments.
Okay. So in the staff report, page 3, in concluding that the project is exempt from CEQA, one reason given is only minor modifications will be made to the structure. It seems like a major remodel. So I see a discrepancy there. In attachment 5.
When I meant please close, I meant please close.
Okay, I'm sorry. So, okay, one more point, please. The traffic consultant estimates 123 daily trips, 22 in the morning, peak hour, 22 in the afternoon, 23 in the afternoon. And they estimate only 5% of the project traffic will use Serena Way to get to Mauricia and Kiley Boulevard. Their conclusion is residents living on Serena Way would not notice the increase in traffic. That doesn't make any sense. You're going to have 123 trips.
I think you used up your time. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, would anyone like to? Oh, Commissioner Chahal.
Sir, you mentioned that you have been there since last 40 years?
Yes.
So the south side, that parking lot, if you see over there,
Yeah.
has that been parking lot forever, or what was it?
No, that's actually belongs to the car dealership. It's not public parking. There's an error in the documentation.
So this was always a commercial property?
Yes,
With the, okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Since I've been there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Kate Slama.
Honorable Planning Commission, thank you for letting me talk. I thought we had 4 minutes to talk, though. You only gave him 2, and I only have 2.
2 minutes.
It's 2? You said 4 earlier. I have been associated with Serena Way for 60 years. I grew up on the street, and I purchased a home there 20 years ago. My father is the last remaining original owner on the street. When Ms. Liu proposed this project in November of 16, critical project components were not disclosed. Had this information been disclosed at the time, I would not have agreed to the project. Serena Way is used as an employee parking lot by many of the car dealerships. I'm starting to photo document that. And this project will eliminate probably 2 parking spaces that are badly needed. When the city grants a modification or variance to the zoning codes, it impacts the surrounding neighborhoods. Serena Way has felt these impacts. The commercial residential project that replaced Office Depot on Stevens Creek was granted reduced parking with the caveat that there would be shared parking between the residential and commercial. The residential area is gated, so there is no shared parking. The parking lot is often full and they spill over onto Serena Way because we're the first street. I fear for the safety of the children in this daycare because of the close proximity to Stevens Creek. Car dealers unload their cars in the middle of Stevens Creek in the left-hand turn lane. Since Walmart went in, people drive down that lane because they don't know where the entrance is. And Serena Way is used for U-turns constantly. And most of them make their U-turns right in front of the proposed project. A traffic study was completed a while back, and the average speeds on the street were around 40 miles an hour. Rezoning to non-residential will devalue our residential properties. I will be surrounded on 3 sides. I am directly across the street from this property. This project will change the dynamics of our neighborhood, put children in harm's way, increase traffic and parking issues, and devalue our properties. I respectfully urge the Planning Commission to deny this request, preserve our neighborhood, and protect the children while you have the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? I have a question. So you've been documenting cars that are parked on your street?
That belong to the dealerships, yes. BMW and Porsche are 2 of the biggest users of our street for parking.
Okay, so during the staff report, they said that they're studying the use permit that were issued to those dealers and see if the employers are required to park on their own lots instead of on the street. So is there any way we can close this discussion? Because, I mean, they're providing the documentations and the photographs, and you're studying the use permits, so. Because the first speaker said he reported on the dealer whose employees are parking on on Sarah Way, and nothing happened. And
so our code enforcement hasn't received any complaints. We're looking into it independently. If there's nothing in the use permit requiring on-site parking by employees, it is a public street. So beyond that, there's not much that can be done beyond the traffic, like the 2-hour parking or signage that was mentioned earlier.
Oh, okay, so what I'm hearing is that unless you're currently studying the use permit, if those permits do not include a requirement that the employees park on their own lots, then there's very little recourse for the residents on the dealer employees parking on their streets unless they move to change the parking rules on their street by working with the traffic department. Did I lay out how things are?
You summed it up, yes.
Okay.
I did request permit parking back in 2015 and it was denied.
Oh, I see. And have you complained to the code enforcement?
I've complained about a lot of things. I've had the police out there for homeless issues that are going on at the vacant office building next door to me on the corner of Serena Way. I am the property directly across the street from this project. It is not an office building, it's residential.
The one, like not the one across, but the one up?
I am the one directly across. See the green? Go straight across. Straight across.
That corner.
No, that's an empty office building right now.
That's the empty office building. Okay, I understand that. Thank you.
The police have been out there 3 times in the last week rousting out a homeless guy.
Oh, thank you. Okay, Jerry Brown.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to speak to the council, or the planning commission rather. We've been residents of Serena Way around 15 years. In that time, we've experienced the same sort of degradation in the residential nature of the neighborhood as my neighbor has explained. A lot of that is due to the parking, overflow parking from the dealerships, and unfortunately, just across the street on Stevens Creek is San Jose. We have no say in San Jose. So even though you might deign to help us, you really don't have any power to. You'd have to go to San Jose Council, and oddly enough, they're not too interested in what we have to say. The other thing is that there's an increased usage of the street as a thoroughfare. And I've seen and stopped cars on the road doing well over 40 miles an hour on a residential street there. So those are just kind of collateral issues. What I would urge you to do is deny this application based on it does not meet the minimum requirements for this zoning. You're asking for a variance from 65 feet to 60 feet. Right? You're also, even though you say it's not subject to your floodwater or flood planning stages, the street is an old urban street. It doesn't meet the current code, code. It has no storm drains. As a result, Santa Clara will not even maintain our street at all. In the 15 years I've been there, Mauritia has been recoded twice. We have had zero maintenance on our street. You're going to double or triple our traffic, and you're not going to even help us maintain our street. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Chahal.
I have a question for staff on this one. Like even I saw Kate note on that file that we have been told by the city that the street cannot be repaired due to the existing substandard state of the street. And same thing was highlighted again. So what is exactly why aren't we improving the street on that?
I'm sorry, are you asking whether or not, why we're not installing storm drains?
If I hear right, the resident saying their street has not been improved, and the reason being given existing substandard state of the street cannot be repaired due to the existing substandard state of the street. So it's already substandard and it's not being improved. I'm asking why the city, maybe Kate can give some more clarification on that. Who said that from the building department, why it's not being improved? So they said they cannot improve it because it's substandard? Yes. So that's my question, like if there is a street.
I could insert a little bit of information here that I'm thinking I'm correct, is that they're talking about maintenance of it, not redoing it. Our house I'm in a very similar neighborhood. We did have our street, we were county street, and it had the substandard deal. We had to pursue it through Public Works and through the city council. And it was a matter of basically redoing the street on it. So they went down to the bottom level on it. So that is an issue that you'd need to bring with Public Works, but it has been accomplished before.
If you would like to have a private discussion with Commissioner O'Halloran on how he worked in his neighborhood.
Yeah. I'm very familiar with Serena Way as well.
Okay, all right, thank you. Okay, thank you. Yu Su.
Much. I just submit a car in case I have to say. But that's okay, since I'm here. Thank you for letting me speak.
You're entitled to speak, yes.
Yeah, I'm Yusu, and I'm working on a company not far away from here in Pocono. Some of you probably go there, and when we expand back. I work in here 20 years, and I live in here, so this is the place I work and I live. This is my city. So my wife been working on daycare center for almost 35 years when I date her. She's a young daycare center. So her dream is have a daycare, her own daycare. So when we see this property come out and we purchase it, and we, as my wife said, we go to city, see if it is possible to become a city. We do all these guideline or procedure, everything follow city's regulation, procedure, everything today. Okay. At the very beginning, we consult our neighbor. You see, there's a neighbor. We have 10 family support our project, include the kid. Okay. include Kay, and so she even told me to help us if anybody have problem, she can come over to convince them. So we are very happy to start this project, and we put the sites in it, we follow the city, we do everything we can do to comply with the city. And the site was there years ago. I got no complaint. We didn't hear any complaint. All of a sudden, it come out all this complaint. Okay, we don't know. K is good, and we are good neighbor. When we move to this neighbor, we are very good neighbor. K, we exchange a gay Christmas gift during the Christmas time, and K make a very delicious cake. I love it. And the Jerry is my friend too. She went to fishing and give me an extra fish. So I have no idea what this complaint come from, why they support this project before and suddenly not support anymore. So anyway, the problem they have right now is always the street with the dealership. It's nothing. And our traffic study indicate the daycare doesn't change anything currently. So that's all I want to emphasize. Our project doesn't change whatever is in here, okay? So please,
Well, thank you, thank you. So
thank you.
when you collected the signatures from your neighbors, when was that done?
Huh? We did at very beginning, and you have a copy over there.
When was?
Kate was inside that signature.
Oh, okay.
Can I answer the question? Because I was the one handling it, because my husband just supported me, so, and the signature I did collect.
Sure, when was that?
Was September 10th, and that's
Of 2017?
Yes, I walk it door by door, and this is I submitted this one.
We have it, we saw a copy. So,
Yeah.
it's in
So
September
for this one, and I indicate that it was 26 kids on the top of the ladder. I never see there's 10 kids. So that's the original paper. I hand out lock it door by door, asking people to sign it. So the gentleman over there, that gentleman, he lived there 40 years old. 40 years, he didn't sign. Kate had signed. Because I get encouragement from her. She said she's going to help me to do this project. However, I think the Airbnb was turning her little bit, aside, and plus the traffic on the street. I myself went through that too, because the traffic is really, everybody try to park in the car on the street. It's very hard. So I think as Miss Rebecca said, I have no control for that. So the signature I did, knock on the door with the letter, 26 kids, and door by door, and people signed.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
One thing I had a problem with your signature page. It actually-
Commissioner
I'm sorry.
O'Halloran, yeah.
I'm sorry. They're actually not signatures, they're just agreements. And I saw one that was 261 Serena Way where they agreed, but then they also sent an email opposing that. So I was confused by that.
Yes, and
Is that the person you're talking about?
excuse me, 261, yes, they signed it. Basically on this paper, people wrote it their own number or the house number, and they wrote it on the comments of gray. So I did not write anything because I don't know who will do it. So that's the words from the residents. And plus, when I've been told, when I knock on the door, I knock on the door with 300 meters. I think and right now it goes to 500. And I noticed that it does 171. It's not on my area, so I did knock that door. So right now they send an email, and I noticed that another email. It's I noticed 261, and there's there's one house that has 3 members send an email to against. It's under the one house number 261, and then another number is another in the area is a 2. Excuse me.
Chair Casey, can I just
sorry,
mention
buddy.
that we should continue with the
240.
public hearing, and this is part of the rebuttal,
Okay.
so I would recommend
All right.
that we
I think-
reserve that till
Thank you.
following all
Thank
the
you for your
comments.
recommendation.
Sorry.
Okay, so please sit down. Thank you. All right, Mukesh Vardhan. Vardhan? I can't. Vardhan.
Good evening. Thank you for the opportunity. So I've been living here about 7 years now in Sarina Way. Been in Santa Clara around the same neighborhood more than 11 years. Salina Way is one of the worst street actually to have a residence. I have 5-year-old and 7-year-old kids. Really unsafe to drop them in the driveway also. Uh, there are people coming to the dealership and doing a test drive and speeding. Not only the employees, but customers like me, if we want to go and find a street, right across Stevens Creek, they would come and speed on Salina Way. It's really unsafe right now. As people pointed out, the street quality is not great. We've not been able to maintain our street. Uh, Over years, continuous traffic has been pouring in. When Porsche had their repairing going on, several more employees were parking than what it is now. And that's a continuous problem. There's a coffee shop right next door. We have people over there parking. So having a daycare, not only for like new children coming to the daycare, it's going to be unsafe on that street, but it's going to impact existing residents. It's going to change. Our resident street is already kind of deteriorating. It's going to get worse. And my fear is, I know you all said business license needs to be applied when it needs to be converted to a medical office or something, but there are always ways around to meet that, parking or something. So my concern is this will not stop here. We will have more commercial places coming on Salina Way. Obviously, it's going to meet all the requirements, but it's going to change the nature of the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. No questions, okay? A or F? Sakara, ready?
Thank you for giving the opportunity. I guess most of my neighbors expressed the same thing, even I'm having the same concern. I moved in here 2.5 years ago. I'm facing the traffic issue almost every day. The morning around 8:15, I go and drop my kid at the school. By the time I come back, my parking lot's been occupied. So the situation is such a bad thing. If we continue to get this kind of commercial activity, I don't know how the problem is going to be. That's the only thing I want to make. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Manish Rastogi? Rastogi.
Hey, yeah, Manish Rastogi. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk. I moved over here at Serena Way 4 years back, and actually the problem what is there is like we are already having too much parking problem, and once we give more opportunity for the commercial it is starting from the first house, then it will move on to the next one, and we are not trying to fix the existing problem and trying to give an opportunity to have another problem. And in terms of the use permit, staff mentioned that at the time of re-giving the use permit for the next business, they are going to readdress. But what will happen? Like right now we are talking about 28 kids and talking about 2 parking spots. If licensing changed that to on every 5 kids or 6 kids, 1 teacher is allowed, from where we are going to get the parking for this? And on top of that, city is not able to do anything on the dealership at this point of time. They want resident to take initiative and get that something done. If similar kind of thing will happen to this particular issue, what we need to address one more problem. So that's what I want to talk. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Manish Rastogi? Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I put the card in the wrong place. Bryce McQueen.
Good evening. I've been a resident on that street for 25 years, but I've been associated with that property my whole life since my grandfather built that house in the 50s. So I'm very familiar with the area. Daycare can be fine. Daycare can be allowed as a family daycare and keep the existing residential zoning district. I am not in support of changing the zoning to commercial. There is no justification for reducing the lot width. The site is basically too tight. You already know that in the fact that they are asking for an easement on the other property just to have access to the rear. But that whole layout is terrible. I cannot imagine anybody other than the employees parking in the back there. That means that people are going to be trying to use the circular drop-off or just parking on the street and walking their kids in. I don't think it's a good situation. It's just not a good site plan layout. You're also showing as a condition of approval a 6-foot masonry wall because that's a code requirement along the residential. That site plan for some reason is showing that wall going all the way to the sidewalk, which doesn't make any sense because you should have a vision triangle next to the driveway. That's all I got to say. I can't support rezoning. I think the city just recently got through changing our general plan on our street to residential in order to keep the residential. And now here we're going to go ahead and rezone it to commercial and say, oh, it doesn't have to be consistent with the general plan. I can't follow that at all.
Thank you. So that I have a question based on Mr. McQueen's the issues he raises. So there's no other way. There's no way to allow a daycare center here without rezoning.
A daycare center of this size, as the speaker mentioned, you can have a family daycare in a single-family residence up to 14 children.
Up to 14 children. So it's the size of the children that they want to enroll that
the number of children
drives this issue. Okay, understand. So 14 is a limit? Okay.
For a family daycare home.
Based on this site plan, you're going to have kids having to walk across a parking lot to get to their play area. The site's just not set up for this daycare.
And, okay, thank you very much. Any other questions? All right. Okay, next question. Susan Chu?
Good evening, Planning Commissioner. I'm the architect of a placard. So through the other people's speeches, I have a feeling they all complain current public transportation. So if a city can improve the existing traffic condition, we will be greatly appreciated. Through our traffic study, the daycare didn't change or increase the traffic problem. So we appreciate if a city can improve the problem. And also from planning, I'm the planning expert. From planning, from an architecture design point, we always encourage daycare to set up in the residential area. It's not like a regular office, a store, same situation for the commercial area. It's convenient for the neighborhood. And also, we have a circular driveway. We have a parking lot, playground on the backyard, which provide safety for children or drop children in the backyard. They only increase the neighborhood traffic. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else? Oh, okay, Commissioner Salim. Would you...
Was any design explored for front parking instead of creating the easement issues and the side access to create back parking when you could avoid that entirely?
Would you like to come back to the podium and answer the question?
Force us to put the parking lots on the back. We like to put on the front, but deny.
What were the reasons for the back parking required?
Yeah.
So the intention behind that was having the circulation around the building, and second, or most importantly, to retain some residential character in the front, because if it has parking in the front, it has more of a commercial office feel rather than maintaining more compatibility with the surrounding structures.
I think it feels like you're trying to hide the issue, because if you're already going to convert it to a different use, the idea of forcing the parking in the back is really not addressing the issues of the neighbors. If you put the parking in the front, you avoid the entire circulation issue of getting in and out of the property. Also, you increase the available space for the play area. So if you have a parking lot directly adjacent to it, having front parking doesn't seem to be a huge issue at this point.
Can I just point out that the parking isn't available to be accomplished in the front parking, the front setback because of the minimal amount of the dimensions that are there. You cannot back out into a street on other than single family. So everything else you have to make a multi-point turn on site or have a drive aisle to exit, basically driving onto the street. You can't back out into the street. So for that reason, we didn't encourage the parking there either. It's infeasible.
Yeah, I understand. Angled parking on the front with a backup area and then exit onto the street is perfectly reasonable. I've done it, I've seen it, so I understand. But I think it seems part of the problems here is, and in sympathy with the neighborhood, you're creating a lot of extra access issues to get all of the parking in the back and also to increase the amount of walking that the drop-offs need in order to get in and out of the facility.
Okay, Commissioner Jane.
I had asked the question earlier. I see there's two elevations. One looks like it's stucco on the outside and one looks like it's clapboard. Is in the drawings.
Well, I think
what
it should
is-
be all stucco.
It's all stucco.
But match the existing house condition, match the neighborhood.
Okay, well, the drawings show clapboard, so I don't know, hardy board. In any case, the other question I had was that the drop-off, there's two drop-off spots in the front, but can people drop off in the back as well?
Yeah, that's
So-
required, recommended to go to the backyard, not front.
So you could actually have, say, 8 cars lined up in that driveway going all the way around, dropping off kids. So conceivably, no one would have to ever park in the neighborhood to drop off their kids.
We not recommend the children's parents, parents to park in the neighborhood. We encourage people take a circular driveway, drop the kids on the backyard, then go to the street.
But it seems conceivable to me that you could actually stack 8 cars in that driveway all the way around the house and avoid any parking in the neighborhood.
Yes.
Do the parents have to walk the kid into the unit? So I don't think that the parent can just abandon the car in the queue and then that will cause total backup, no?
No, I mean, presumably that they'll wait in the car until they get to the door and let their kid out at the door.
Lisa can probably confirm, but they're based on a certain age, the children need to be walked into the facility, correct? They can't just be dropped off. They need to be walked in and signed in.
There's a two-way you can do it. Because if whoever have a kids from a challenge school, if the challenge school, the teacher come outside, release the kids, and send the kids to car, and then ask the parent to sign it. So you can do that way. So we can have an actual teacher standing outside and pick up the kids from each car, and then the parents sign it and take the kids inside, or the parents can park in the car, drop kids to the classroom. So that you can do the two ways.
So you can do that? Would you be willing to do
we'll
that?
provide an extra service and just actually employee standing there for the morning business hour and afternoon business hour.
Do we make that a condition?
That could be a condition of the use permit.
Thank you. Okay, any more questions?
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Salim.
So 190 Serena Way already has a circular entrance with front parking. I don't know if you've noticed. It's kind of hidden by landscape, but it's not available in this image. You need to look at Google Maps, and then you'll find that that's not an unusual, apparently it's not an unheard of situation for the neighborhood on the same street.
Okay, any more questions or comments? Okay, would the applicant like to come up and rebut the comments that were made by your neighbors?
Everybody coming, and also I think people mentioned about the traffic on the street, and we have no control about it. Another things, I think I don't have. I just appreciate everybody coming for tonight. No comment.
Thank you. So I do have one more question about this, the sign, the paper that neighbors signed. I didn't study the addresses the way Commissioner O'Halloran did, but was there any neighbor who first said it was okay and then said, no, you changed your mind? And if that is the case, could you, I'd love to hear what your thinking process was. It's not a question addressed to you, it's a question addressed to your neighbors.
Sure, I talk about,
Yeah. And if you'd like to step aside, please, go ahead.
Can we do that at the rebuttal?
We already done with the rebuttal. Okay, yes, thank you.
When the project was proposed, certain components of it were left out, such as the rezoning, which is what I am opposed to because I will be surrounded on 3 sides by non-residential properties in a residential area. And the complete demolition and rebuild was listed as a remodel, not a demolition of the building and a rebuild.
So, so a rezoning is a big issue.
It's a big issue for me because it will devalue the property of my residential property. I've spoken to 2 different real estate agents, and that is true in fact.
Okay, thank you.
I did sign the petition in favor of daycare, but I'm not in favor of rezoning.
Okay, rezoning is a major issue, I understand. Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I have one more question to the applicant. So instead of 14 children, you can do this without rezoning, but you want to take care of more children. What is the reason behind that?
Okay, first one, the family daycare I did. Family daycare and the child care center is a total difference. The family daycare doesn't really needs a teacher whoever have an EC units, like early childhood educator. So whoever, everyone, you can be open, operate a family daycare at your house. So that looks like people look most likely like a babysitter. They don't really respect you as a child care teacher. And that's when you hire a teacher, like when you do the family daycares, so they don't request like a qualification for the family daycare operator.
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
Okay, the family daycare child care center, a total difference is family daycare. So whoever willing to operate a family daycare, you can apply license for operate a family daycare. But child care center, so they have a qualification request. So teacher must be qualified with the early childhood education units. So people treat you a different way, family daycare and the child care difference.
But is that the driving issue here that requires zoning?
Yeah, the family daycare is a limitation for 14 kids. They can mix the kids, like I explain to you a little bit more about family daycare. Family daycare, you can mix a baby with a squidge, like a 1-month-old baby with a 12-year-old kids, you can mix together in one classroom. But child care center, you have a category. So as the gentleman also talked about it, toddler is from 18 months to 2.5 years old, you have to be in one room. And 3 years old to 5 years have to in one classroom. So you cannot mix all the age group together. That's a total difference.
So you're trying to operate a child care
center.
And the reason I'm hearing is that because childcare is a more prestigious operation that requires licensing, childcare, the people whom you're gonna hire must be licensed. Is that what I'm hearing?
Family daycare, you need to have a license too. Childcare center need a license. As I try to explain to you about it, family daycare, also the whoever must live inside the property to operate a family daycare.
I still don't understand how this relates to the number of students. Okay.
For a family daycare, you have to live in there.
You have to
So
live
we have
there.
to move in there in order to open the family daycare.
Okay.
So I cannot do that.
So you don't live there right now? This has been a rental property, and you don't plan to live there either?
Yeah, we have
You want
the.
to start a standard daycare, so you don't have to live there, right?
Thank you.
I still don't understand. Why do you not want to operate with 14 children? Why do you have to have 28 children? Because rezoning is a big issue for your neighbors, so I'd like to understand what drives this need for more children, which is generating so much opposition from your neighbors.
I already live in 271, and 281 is the one I'm trying to rezoning. Right now I'm living in 271 next door.
Okay?
Yeah.
I still don't understand why you need to have more than 14 children.
So in that way, I have to move it to 271. I have to live inside, and there's a room I have to have a furniture inside. You cannot have a professional environment for the kids. So I will live inside the house, and I have my furniture and everything set up for my room.
Okay, is there something I'm not understanding?
I don't know. Thank you. Thank you, Rebecca.
So for a family daycare, you have to live inside the home. So I think what Lisa is saying is she already lives next door, so she wants to operate a child care center. Plus, in addition, she has the qualifications to run a child care center versus a family daycare, which is more like a babysitter, I think.
Can I explain?
Yeah,
So-
sure.
So, I mean, if you let 14 kids into your house, you can't have nice furniture. You can't have a nice house.
Thank you.
She wants to have a nice house, and then she wants to have a separate space where she takes care of kids.
Hence you mean use one of the two homes as a residence and the other as a...
Yes.
And excuse me, and then the family daycare, you have a furniture, and the kids will, that's the daycare center, like a rezoning right now. It's no furniture inside. It's a professional environment for the kids to play inside the classroom. But family daycare, it's not. It's I don't know how to explain. Thank you.
Well, I'm just curious, if you're a professional daycare teacher, you say you want to be a family daycare teacher, or you want to be a professional daycare teacher? That's obviously it's different. Like you want to work on Google, you don't want to work on a smaller company. It's a bigger company. That's her dream, to have a commercial and a real daycare. Is not family. Family daycare, everybody can open. Everybody can do it. And she has a qualification. She has a uni. She has a certification, degree, everything. That's a bigger goal. So people want a bigger goal.
So you can't run a child care center there without rezoning? Is that true? You cannot. You can run a family care, but not the child care. And the difference being whether the person who runs it lives there or not? Is that the main difference?
The number of children, the type of operator, and then living in the facility, or in the home in that case.
Okay. Does this all make sense to other people? Okay. Because, I mean, I'm not suggesting that you should skirt a law, but if you live next to it, then you can say that you live in that unit without moving in your nice furniture. So then that will, you can avoid the rezoning.
Right now, I'm working at Center, and I'm a director there. I'm a director for 60 years, 60 kids for a child care center. So I myself in 2000, when my kids were young, my husband engineer, I have 2 young kids. I did open family daycare, so for a couple of years. So myself knows what the family daycare operation and what the child care center operation. And right now I'm a director working at child care center, so we know how to set up the classroom and provide it like a professional environment for the kids. That total different operation, a philosophy.
It's a completely different operation.
And a philosophies.
Okay, so this is not driven by the number of students, this is
No.
driven by the type of operation?
Yeah, the qualification and
Is it
and the
true?
philosophy.
Is it driven by the type? It's a number and the type of operation. Does childcare center charge more money than the families?
That's not a necessary.
That's not the driving issue.
That's not a necessary, depends how you operate it. If you operate a childcare center, you may not get a higher still like tuitions.
Oh.
The parents know, so what depends on what kind of program you provide. And also the philosophy, like environment, the classroom, how you set up. So that's a program, and that's will make it tuitions difference.
Okay, well, thank you for explaining all that, thank you. Okay, any more questions? All right,
Motion to close public hearing?
okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. Discussions? Okay, Commissioner O'Hall, Commissioner Kelly.
All right. You know, a couple points that I've already touched on. One, I'd like to see, even though it's not per se part of this application, better enforcement, because I think the dealerships do impact the street. And obviously, if they're test driving, they may be going too fast. I think that should be reiterated by code enforcement. Now, I'm wondering why code enforcement does that if the applicant would be reasonable and instead of going for the maximum, which I guess is 28 kids, go to like 20 kids and let code enforcement do their job, put up additional signage, and try to meet the need for daycare, because a lot of people do need daycare. It is convenient because it's close to a major thoroughfare. And hopefully some of these issues can be addressed. So the applicant and their neighbors can feel they're getting the best possible outcome. You know, I think we do need daycare. I live across the street from an elementary school, and every morning and every afternoon, I have people parking in front of my house. It is inconvenience, but we need public schools. We also need daycare. And I think we can work on the parking issues, and I think if the applicant would allow for drop-off in the roundabout, that would hopefully mitigate part of the issues of people being concerned about additional people parking in that neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner O'Halloran.
Yes, I recognize the need for the daycare, as stated in some of the articles about the dual-income families. However, ultimately, this is a commercial operation, and I see it as a commercial operation into encroachment into the neighborhood, and the general plan was very specific about not allowing that on there, and so that's why I guess we're seeking an amendment. But I think there's a lot of discussion about this issue along Stevens Creek. Stevens Creek's a major issue with the city. I know we've had lawsuits with the city of San Jose, and a lot of it has to do with traffic, and one of the impediments has been the San Jose Planning Department having control of the ideas on Stevens Creek. But basically, despite our needing this is a commercial operation, and I think commercial operation should be where we've got commercial zoning and where we have the commercial identities in the general plan. So I will oppose and recommend against this.
Thank you. I have a question to the staff. If it turns out that the commission recommends against rezoning, but approves the use permit, or if the applicant were to run a facility with 14 students, do they need a use permit, or they don't even need a use permit? Okay, and if and they can any use permit that's being proposed in that's being proposed today would be immaterial if the rezoning does not go through. Okay, understand. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying. All right, Commissioner, you're done. Commissioner Chahal.
So, listening to all the comments, and reading the findings, I could not make a reasonable finding to make a zoning change on this one. If you look at on the findings, first resolution, finding of 3A, it says the existing zoning is inappropriate or inequitable in that the project site is directly adjacent to a commercial corridor of Stephen Creek Boulevard. The allowance for suitable administrative office commercial business at this location would provide a buffer between the commercial automotive activities on the Stephen Creek Boulevard and the single family. So if we keep encroaching, as Commissioner Holland was saying, it does not reflect good. So if I take this finding, so Kate's house is the next one, which is right next to a commercial property. So that should be put another buffer zone into it. And then we are extending this commercial into a neighborhood. And we are not doing anything to protect our neighborhood. And if you check out the details, like traffic on the street, I fully agree with this. And when I saw the traffic study that there is only effect is only on the Stephen Creek and the Serena Way, not on Morris and Serena, I was surprised. Like, how come if people coming from the other side to drop off the kids, that will affect that street in totality, whether it's coming from Stephen Creek? And I do not agree with the traffic study as submitted on this one. And like they mentioned, like on the page 28, that only Stephen Creek side of the traffic will be affected. And that's, I don't agree to that thing. And going back, like, I'm not sure what's going on. Like, we are trying to build housing on a commercial sites and then trying to convert the residential into commercial site. That's alarming sign to me. Like, it's not a good sign. I read all the comments from the emails, and it is like no space for garbage, even keeping the garbage. And I agree to you. I've seen that thing in some other neighborhoods, and I can see that. And one solution which I can give you an example, which all of the street residents can follow. There's a neighborhood in Sheraton and El Capitan, on the corner of Monroe and Los Padres. They got 1 hour parking restriction on their streets, and those streets are quite in. They don't have a situation like yours is the worst situation, where you are getting so much overflow of parking from the auto companies over there. So I think you should discuss with the staff and follow that and get a 1 hour parking on the street. And it should be doable. I know you mentioned that it was denied in 2015, but if you take that example as then you should be able to do that. And that can alleviate your parking issue on that. And like, the main thing for the resident is the quality of life. And their quality of life on this street is always lower than average street on the city. And if we add this thing, like I know they were mentioning that, oh, traffic's not an issue. It will add up to existing traffic. And we have to protect or improve the quality of life of residents, not to say, oh, it's already there, so let's add another 4 or 5 trips or 10 trips to it. No, that's not the solution. We have to take care, if they're existing, let's solve that existing, not to add anything on top of that. And I would, like, find out about, like, I would ask the staff to really work on the code violation thing, which we're talking about, like, I know the residents I mentioned, but as a side note, let's find out what are the findings of the code violation. But with all these reasons, I will not be supporting the resolutions on this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Commissioner Jane.
So the major complaints that I heard was speeding on this street, the lack of parking, mostly due to the coffee shop and the auto dealerships, and then the quality of the street. I think whether this project becomes a daycare or not, those things would barely change. Those are things that the residents need to take care of in working with the city. The city doesn't do a good job with traffic engineering. I just have to admit that. Other cities have worked with Google and Waze to try to put in the correct restrictions to not have those programs direct traffic onto this, off of Kylie onto the street. So there's a lot of work that the residents will need to do to improve the quality of life for themselves. I agree that there's going to be drop-offs to this facility from both sides, from the Stevens Creek side and from the other side, Mauritia. But either way, for this project, I don't think it's going to affect your quality of life. The only thing that I do see is that rezoning this to commercial could affect property values. And that is something, that's the only point that I have for wanting to disallow this rezoning. So, is the effect on property values. But I think unless the residents take charge of the speeding, the parking, I mean, Kate Slama, sorry if I mispronounce your name, said that the street is going to lose 2 parking spots due to this. But if this house, if a family were to move into this house with 2 teenage kids, they would park their cars in front of that house all the time anyway. You wouldn't be getting the parking spots. So you can't really control that. And I think that probably rarely would people park on the street and walk their kids. They're just going to drop their kids off. Were the commission to vote in favor of this, I would like to make a condition that there be a maximum number of teachers so that the parking spots in the back wouldn't be used by, say, 4 teachers. I do like the idea of having an extra employee to maybe receive the kids from the cars so people don't have to park and walk their kids. But I'm guilty of that. When my son was going to school, I would park in the neighborhoods and I'd walk him to school. So that's just going to happen as Commissioner Kelly described in front of his house. That is just the nature of living in a city. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Salim.
So I have a question. Since the owner owns both properties, is there any option for them to unify the property to a single property?
They could, but then they would need to rezone both parcels in order to.
No, I'm not suggesting that. I was suggesting that as a single property, the residence is the residence that they're in, and the outbuilding is the adjacent property where they can run a home daycare, which is not a rezoned issue.
No, because the building, I mean, the use has to be contained within a single family home, and if you have
They remodeled a joint access between the homes. Is not considered a single family home?
having 2 structures on one lot?
Yeah,
It's not single family. There's more than one dwelling unit there then.
In what evaluation? It's if it's one property with one owner and 2 buildings, it's still one property.
You
I
can't.
understand your
yeah,
objection, but I'm also looking for options for them to have a home daycare without just denying it completely. Obviously, I'm not heavily in favor of a rezoning because it does erode the neighborhood and becomes a nibbling effect away for the other residents. But and I sympathize with her desire to run a daycare, if you cannot allow them to run a daycare in a home that they don't reside in, how could they declare these two homes as a single home as the owner of both properties?
You can't do that.
Why?
Because a single-family property is one dwelling unit, and the only allowance for an accessory building is a 480-square-foot detached structure, and this exceeds that. Secondly, you're not allowed to run a daycare operation, a small family daycare operation in a detached building. It has to be within the main residence.
Do you have any more comments, Commissioner Sullivan? That's it. Okay, thank you. Okay, Commissioner O'Halloran.
I just want to have some side comment, but just a follow-up on Commissioner Jane's comment. I think, first off, Stevens Creek is going to be busy, and it's going to get busier, and I think you need to recognize that if you're in their neighborhood. But there are things you can do to do it, and I would encourage the group to do it, and I do say as a group, I think in our neighborhood, what we had to do is we had to make a petition to get the 1 hour parking there, but there are pluses and minuses to that. That means there's only 1 hour for you as well. And then there's, yeah, I guess that's another alternative. You could follow up on what you can do there, on there. And I like the suggestion of Ms. Mastriani of looking for possibly restricting the entrance on Serena Way, which I imagine you're saying a left off of Stevens Creek. And that, again, might reduce some of the traffic. But again, these aren't directly related to the application, so I just wanted to make those side comments.
Thank you. Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah, I just had a question for staff. Obviously, it would have to be commercial in zoning, but can we tie the zoning to like the license, so if they sell the property, it reverts back to residential?
I don't think we can because
Zoning is governed by 18.112, Chapter 18.112 of the code, and it requires the same sort of process that's coming before you tonight.
The same process.
Okay.
And also, just to clarify, they are proposing to rezone it to office, so not full commercial, so it has a more limited base of uses than a commercial property would.
Thank you. Okay, I have a comment to make. After hearing the applicant and the neighbors, I myself did not make a finding that the rezoning was justified or necessary. I didn't feel that the applicant's presentation made a convincing case that rezoning was called for this property, and I am very concerned. I hear the neighbors' concern that rezoning will devalue their properties. So I too am opposed to rezoning. And I think we're getting to the end of the discussion, and we will be voting on 2 recommendations. And since use permit is immaterial without the rezoning, if someone is going to make a motion, I recommend that that first motion be about rezoning. Okay, do we have any motion?
I would like to make a motion that that we recommend to the council not to change the rezoning on this property.
Second.
Okay, any discussions? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Is it unanimous? Okay. All right, so should we still look for a motion on the use permit?
Yes, because the rezoning will still go forward to council.
Right, understand. Okay, do we have any motion on the second recommendation by the staff?
I'll make a motion to approve, but it's not going to go
I would like to make a comment that, I think just a very straightforward deal on it. The use, as it's laid out, is a commercial use, and I think it is isn't in the general plan. I don't think it was ever intended to be in the general plan. And so I would like to, I guess I'm going to oppose the motion.
Okay, so Commissioner Kelly makes a motion. Commissioner Jane seconds it.
Please be advised that this would be the time to attach any conditions to this use permit in the case that City Council approves the rezoning.
Can you repeat what you said again?
This would be the time to attach any additional conditions you may want to put on the use permit in the case that council does approve the rezoning.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much.
I would like to attach a condition to this.
Okay,
And were council to approve this, I believe that we need to restrict the
when
number
you say
of
this, you're talking about rezoning.
the rezoning.
Uh-huh.
Then we need to limit the number of employees there. So I would like to have a maximum of 2 teachers and 3 employees, and a total of 3 employees on the site.
Okay, and how about your earlier comments about having an employee available to sign the children in?
Well, that's what I'm saying, is 2 teachers maximum, but 3 employees maximum.
So you're
So that would allow for a non-teacher to be there or a teacher to be there.
but that's not the same thing
Or,
as requiring that the applicant have somebody available to sign in the children. Was that part of the, is that part of the
No,
question?
I think the idea of having 2 teachers means that you would have to have older kids there. So
I understand,
they
but,
could be dropped off.
okay, all right, thank you, thank you. So 2 teachers maximum plus 1 more employee. Okay, do we need an amendment? Do we need to have
Yes,
the?
so Commissioner Kelly made the original motion, and he has the authority to accept Commissioner Jane's friendly amendment.
Do you accept
I accept.
the friendly amendment? Okay. All right, any other amendments or comments? Okay, any discussions? Okay, all right, okay, so, all in favor of the motion to approve the use permit with the amendment made by Commissioner Jane?
I'm sorry, who seconded the motion?
Oh, the second,
I seconded
the
it,
motion
but
was
then I
seconded
made
by
it-
Commissioner Jane.
Okay, let's have
Yeah.
another second.
Thank
You
you.
need another second?
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Okay, no more discussions? All right, let's vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, 3 in favor. Who's opposed? I'm opposed.
I'm opposed.
Okay, 3
Motion does
opposed.
not carry.
Motion does not carry, okay. Right,
Get another motion.
I make a motion to deny the use permit for the daycare.
I'll second that motion.
okay. All right, any discussions? Okay, all in favor of denying the use permit?
Aye.
Okay, 4, so the motion carries.
The 4, or
Five.
was it?
5.
5? Oh, I didn't see Commissioner Salim, I'm sorry. Okay, Commissioner Kelly opposes?
No, I'm okay either way with it, because it's not going to go anywhere.
Okay, when you say, so you're opposed to,
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I would have preferred the family daycare, but that's not what they're asked for. And
so you are voting for the current motion on the floor?
yeah, they're going to have
Okay.
to, if they're going to try to do daycare, they're going to have to come back with something else.
Okay, so the motion carries unanimously that the use permit application is denied. Okay, all right. Thank you very much. Okay, let's move to the next topic, which is public presentation. Would any member of the public like to speak on any matters? Okay, moving on to 8. 8A1. Would Commissioner Halloran like to announce the item?
There was a formal petition, I'm not exactly sure, maybe the group can clarify that, about a request for city email accounts for the planning commissioners.
Okay, thank you. So should we have, this was Commissioner Jane's request, so should we?
I'd like to-
So
like
commi-
some
would-
background
would
on this?
Commissioner Jane like to have the floor, or is Commissioner Jane's request clear to the staff?
So
Okay, let's have you.
I attended the governance committee meeting of the council about a month ago, and I suggested that the council take up the idea that planning commissioners have official emails through which they do all business, all correspondence with developers and applicants and so on, as several other cities have in the area. And they responded with saying that, did I have approval from the Planning Commission? Because we didn't have a formal vote on recommending that we wanted to do this. So they were like, well, you're just coming to us as one of the planning commissioners. So I wanted to put this on the agenda to make sure that we have an official recommendation to council that we move forward on this.
Okay, thank you. Any, Commissioner O'Halloran?
Oh, I'm sorry. Are you going to make a motion on that then?
So I actually need to ask our attorney whether this is something that we do make a motion on.
Yeah, I think you can make a motion to officially request these city email accounts, and it could be made as a note in the minutes to be made, to give attention to the council that you've made this motion and this request.
Okay. So I move that the Planning Commission request from City Council that they provide planning commissioners with city email accounts through which we will be doing official business.
And just to be clear, individual email account.
Individual email accounts. And then that becomes a matter of public record, our emails, and that also, and I'm not as insistent on this, but I like the idea of having public calendars available. So I guess I'm going to put those two together. I'm going to say we're requesting city emails and public calendars.
What is exactly is a public calendar, and how does that get managed?
I imagine staff resources would have to be devoted to that, and that's probably more work for the staff to do that. But it could be as simple as what I do currently is that I have a public Google Calendar. But there is no place on the Planning Commission website for me to post my public calendar. So that would outline all the meetings that I've had with developers and so on. I believe the way they do it is they have some system, I don't know what tool it is they use, but they put their appointments and things on that calendar, and then staff goes through those calendars and creates reports. That's my understanding.
Okay, any seconds?
I'll second it.
Okay, discussions? Commissioner Chahal?
So if the planning commission gets it, so does all the commission get it? Or they can cherry pick, okay, only planning gets it, no
I
other.
think right now it's cherry picking.
Okay.
So it wouldn't, if planning commission gets it, I don't think that automatically means that all the commissions in the city would get it. But also maybe if the governance committee and city council is made aware of this motion, maybe they'll just agree to give all committees and commissions emails. I'm not sure.
Thank you.
So I have questions about the public's right to request for information in our private email accounts. Will this impact the way, well, I mean,
So right now, as the law stands, even if it's in your private email account and you're talking about something that's related to being a planning commissioner, that's a public record, and it can be subject to disclosure if someone requests Commissioner Ikezi's emails about this and this. So staff or, the city attorney's office would ask you to provide those emails from your private email account. I think it just makes it easier to have a city email account to do your business because, our IT department can pick up your emails. It wouldn't have to be a burden on you to give us those emails yourself from your private account.
and let's say that somebody asks for my emails. Who screens them? Because I have.
do. That's me.
Okay, so what's the process? Do I hand over all of my emails and you
You
review
hand
it?
over the emails that have to do with what the request is asking for.
So
and
I
then-
have the right to do the first line
Yes.
screening?
Yes.
Okay. And if the public wants to scrutinize further, then they have to come back to me.
So you would give me the emails that you say are responsive. I look at them and see if there's anything that's subject to any exemptions under the Public Records Act, and I take those out, and then I would handle the request from there and give the public
And
those
if
records.
the public looks at those emails and say, no, I don't think Commissioner Ikezi provided all the emails, then
There's
they come back
nothing
to me?
that could be done. I mean, we take you at your word that you've given me the emails that are responsive.
Okay, I understand. Thank you. All right, any more discussions or questions? Oh, Commissioner Chahal.
So I've seen commissioners using, private email, but mentioning Commissioner so-and-so at the bottom of designation. Do they fall into right information for all the emails? Because they're mentioning, Commissioner XYZ, Commissioner for this commission.
Your email has to have something to do with city business.
Business.
Yes.
So
Just because it says commissioner, if your signature line says Commissioner Chahal, that doesn't make it an official email.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, is this you? Oh, Salem.
So this seems oddly complicated for something so simple. Every employer you go to gives you your business email, gives you a calendar, gives you the things that allow you to do your activities for that employer. As representatives of the city, it seems like an obvious thing that we would have some form of email or calendar that is specific to the city, is maintained, is archived. All aspects of it are publicly accessible because we are public servants in that sense. And I don't have to think about, did I delete something I shouldn't have because it had a mention of a commission issue. So I don't want to maintain my own personal email to do city business when the option is there and available already with the city. So that's part of the reason I'm highly supportive of this.
Thank you. Any more comments? All right, all in favor? Aye. Is it unanimous? Okay, unanimous. All right, thank you. All right, moving on. Board or committee assignments, architectural committee, commissioner travels training, any of these items that anyone wants to report on. Commissioner Kelly.
Yes, is this where I can ask for my travel to the National Planning Convention to be approved?
Oh, okay. Should we take a vote on it? Oh, wait.
Yes,
What happened to the budget?
Okay, so I have the report.
Oh, thank you.
And so last time the commission asked for the balance on their account and also the estimated expenses for the annual preservation conference. I'm sorry, this is the APA, American Planning Association Conference, and this is the national one. And we did estimate the expenses between $2,100 and $2,400 per person, and that includes the round-trip airfare, the hotel, the per diem, and some related transportation expenses while you're there, that kind
And
of
the
thing.
registration.
Yes, that would include Rosa, did that include the registration as well? Okay. And your balance, so it's about, let's say, $2,100 to $2,400, and your balance currently up till June 30th is $7,121.
And APA, this is national, so it's
Yes.
in...
It's in New Orleans this year.
May? It's May?
It's April, I
Oh, April.
believe
Okay,
it's
before the
April.
end of this fiscal year. Okay, understand. All right, thank you. All right, so I think we have all the information. Any motion?
Yeah, can I ask, because last time when me and Raj went, there wasn't sufficient funds to cover all of our costs. Can I ask that, I estimated, not including registration, about 2,100 with airfare, lodging, and food. Can I ask that like 2,100 be set aside, so when we get to April, there's money in the budget to cover the expenses?
I think you can allocate that amount
We
so that,
allocate that?
your only available balance after, if this is authorized, would be minus whatever it is you're authorizing for this,
Registration's
per
like
individual.
$500? Okay, so, 2,600, should we allocate $2,600?
Yeah, that's, what's registration this year
I think
for early
it's
bird? It's like 500?
$675, $675.
Okay, yeah, so if we can allocate 2,600 then?
Okay, $2,600. Any motion to set aside $2,600 for Commissioner Kelly's?
Make my own motion?
Of course.
Can I make a motion that the Planning Commission approves my travel to the National Planning Convention with a 2,600 allocation?
Is anyone else interested in attending? Just so we'd have to know how to
money.
distribute those funds, because that would not be enough for 3 people, would be enough for 2.
But Commissioner Salam, I mean, you've never.
Fortunately, I got huge commitments.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, we're gonna have a new commissioner, so let's set aside two slots, because that new commissioner may be interested in traveling. So let's set aside $5,200? Okay. All right, any second?
Second?
Okay, any discussions? All in favor? Aye. Motion carries unanimously, thank you. All right, anything else? Director of Community Development.
Okay, so just to report on items that went before the city council prior to your, after your last meeting. One is, you may have heard that the city council authorized the review of a cannabis ordinance, so it looks like we will be working on that, and the city has hired a consultant, so that ordinance, of course, would come to you, and there will be public outreach meetings that will notify you about if you wish to attend those.
Are we going to be having more locations than what's already in the city right now?
We don't have any
Have any
operation,
dispensaries
no.
right now?
Because there was a moratorium on the medical marijuana that was approved by city council, and now there's the availability of recreational marijuana as well that was passed under state law. So they're looking at one or both of those, and then how would you regulate those? So we don't know what the outcome is going to be, but both of those options are being.
Do we have medical chemist
We have
centers right
none.
now? We have none.
Because it was prohibited under a moratorium at that time when medical marijuana was approved under a state ballot initiative. That was an option for the city, so. Okay, and the next item is that, as you mentioned, Commissioner Reinhardt did resign, and so that vacancy will be promoted on February 27th. And
I heard from, I was told it was going to be promoted.
I'm sorry, February 6th is the promotion
okay,
that Chairwoman Casey will be doing, and then the actual interviews will take place on February 27th at 5 o'clock.
The applications were due on the 27th, and they were.
Yeah, that's.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I messed it up again. Okay, yes, they're due February 27th, and the interviews are March 6th, 2018.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
They had a big issue, or at least early presentation of 3500 Democracy Avenue.
Yes, I have that next. So one other item is, there was a list of stakeholders and the advisory committee for the El Camino Real specific plan. So that was, and Commissioner Jane is serving on that for the Planning Commission, and the council noted and filed that, but asked that one additional member be added, and that is from the Historical and Landmarks Commission, since the El Camino Real basically abuts a good part of the old quad, so they thought some representation there was appropriate. Your minutes have been forwarded, and the appeal for the Sweet Doggies dog boarding care facility there was an appeal of that decision that the Planning Commission approved the use permit, and the council denied the appeal. They just put a limitation on the hours for outdoor activity from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., and then boarding has to occur all indoors after 7 p.m. And then, as you mentioned, Commissioner Halloran, there was a presentation on the general plan amendment, the early consideration for the Yenzon, the Kylie site at 3005 Democracy Way. So they're looking at a potential for up to 6,000 housing units and I think about 3 million, or is it 6 million square feet?
10 million.
6 million? Oh, 10 million, okay. So all they did was authorize that the process move forward about looking at the general plan amendment process, so. And that's it for reports from the Director of Planning, Community Development.
Okay, thank you very much. Any motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I just wanted to, I probably missed the
Yes,
spot.
Commissioner O'Halloran.
I just want to note that I did attend the webinar for the VTA, and they're talking about the BLES versus the BMT measurements.
Oh.
As did I.
Oh, thank you very much.
That is available online at any time on YouTube, so it was recorded, so you're welcome to watch it. It's at the same link that was mentioned in the email I sent you.
Oh, thank you.
Very informative. I think in 2019, all the cities have to use it, right?
Hey, all right, I better watch it too.
You have to use the
All right.
VMT, but they can use both.
Okay. All right, okay, second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you very much.
Okay.
Planning
That was-
Louisiana?